afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coastal Kings Radio. And today's episode is all about Chengdu, or the parks around Chengdu, rather. If you listened to our last episode, we were in Shanghai. We talked a little bit about Shanghai Disney and some of the stuff we did around the city. And then we bought these cute Tron sweaters, put them on the next morning, and took a plane to Chengdu with China Southern, which we had flown in before a couple years ago, and the experience was great, easy. I feel like traveling within China is like so convenient. It's almost as convenient as a train. It's when you go international, you have to do with Chinese customs. It can take a little bit. But it was a great experience. We got to Chengdu and then went to our hotel. We stayed at the JW Marriott Chengdu, which we got an executive lounge floor room. Beautiful view of the city. Went out and had dinner, walked around too a little bit. And then the next morning, we did our theme parks.
The city is really nice. It's like a very fancy... Chengdu is like high fashion, fancy, kind of like Paris, Milan kind of thing of China. Had a lot of fun walking around there. We didn't do... Really the big thing to do there is like the pandas. The panda breeding and research facility. But we've seen pandas before. We decided to focus our attention elsewhere. So mostly just walking around shopping and then theme parks.
And
theme parks.
The biggest thing, which will only not be in this episode, but we went to Leshan, which is probably the only way to do that if you're not from China, is to do it via Chengdu.
Yeah.
And Leshan is a city maybe like an hour and a half outside of Chengdu, and that's where the giant Buddha of Leshan is, like the birthplace of Buddhism in China. It's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to lump it in with next episode. But we did that in Chengdu as well. So it wasn't just theme parks, but yeah.
And so we went to... The first park, this was really one of the only days, in fact, it might be the only day of the trip where we did two parks in one day.
Yeah, we did that in the past a lot, but this trip it was really a mix of cities and exploring and then one theme park most at a time. But now we did two, yeah.
And it was kind of like a cluster because it definitely took longer to get to Chengdu Sunac than we thought it would. And the infrastructure around the park was complicated.
Very
for the taxi driver. It was kind of a hot mess. I mean, it was all part of the adventure, but man, it was like kind of crazy getting up to that park.
I mean, getting there was wild indeed because first of all, you left the city and then we kind of traced by the metro lines and eventually even the trains all ended. We went out of like beyond the grid. And Chengdu was one of the first major Chinese cities to get a major train network. So it was like we really went out there. And when we flew into Tainfu, which just opened. It's a brand new airport. That was already outside the city, but it was on the other direction, I think. And then this park, the first park we went to, being Chengdu Sunac Land, is actually technically located in Dujiangyan, which is part of the Chengdu Metro, but it's really not close to the city of Chengdu at all. And even though bullet trains go by there, and there is a train station, technically getting there by car, which we did, it took a hot minute. We had mostly just to country roads for a good hour and a half, maybe? I mean, it was really not as convenient as the name Chengdu Sunac Land would imply.
It was definitely a longer trek than expected.
And it's part of a... I was going to mention this later, but I'll mention now. It's part of like kind of like a concept town, like a touristy town with hotels, a Sunac Mall, Sunac Snow World, which is like an indoor ski park. But it was all deserted. I mean, when we rolled up there, when we finally got there, we weren't even sure if it was even open or what the situation was because it was raining and it was just dead. Like, we didn't see anyone.
Yeah. And we drove by a different theme park on the way there. We drove by, So Floraland is a 2-gate amusement park resort that was on the way. It looked abandoned. It's crazy because wasn't it like a Saturday?
Yeah, we actually went on the weekend for this. Yeah,
this was like sometimes you want to avoid parks on the weekends because of crowds. Other times you want to go to parks on the weekend because like you want people to be there so that the rides will be open and running and such. But that was you wouldn't have known it was a Saturday based on like Floraland. And when we got to Sunac, it was kind of the same story. It was raining. We get to the park, like, the staff seemed reluctant to even sell us a ticket, because, like, they're like, oh, there's schools.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. Area. So, like, it was raining, so we did our usual typical Google Translate situation, and we asked them, like, hey, will the coast be open, or is the coast open? She said, well, all rides are open, she said, but when it's raining, the outdoor activities, as it translates to, will be closed. And so we asked, like, well, will it be open if the rain stops? Yeah, all the rides should be open if the rain stops. So we're like, all right, we're going to take the risk. But she kept saying, like, oh, don't buy a ticket because the ride's not open right now. And there's a bunch of kids. And we're like, where the hell are these kids? Because when we went to the park, I kid you not, I didn't even know it was open. Like, the front entrance is kind of rough looking. And the music was it was kind of like broken record kind of sounds. Like, the music wouldn't even play a single song, like, without breaking up. Remember?
Yeah.
And we were just happy that it was open,
bizarre.
but when she was talking about kids, we were really kind of confused. Like, what do you mean there's too many kids in there? So we actually buy a ticket, and we go in, and sure enough, there is, like, thousands of kids in there. I don't even think I'm exaggerating. I mean, there were, like, switchbacks. Every ride that was open, there was just, like, hundreds of kids in line. It was pretty impressive, to be honest with you. But yeah, so we walked by Allspeeds, which is the coaster we came for. Allspeeds is a clone of Taron, a near clone. There's a part of the ride that's taller, which we'll get into in a little bit. But the ride was closed because of the rain, so we decided to ride some other stuff and also be like bombarded by thousands of kids.
Yeah, so we walked around the park. We drew a lot of attention. It became abundantly apparent to us that as two like giant white guys wearing matching outfits, like.
In a park that is in the outskirts of Chengdu with kids that were born just before the pandemic. They probably haven't seen whatever we were ever because we were nowhere near anything major.
Were freaking out. Even the teachers.
Oh my god! And that was
for the school were like thought it was kind of crazy that we were there. I find it funny though that like the staff at the entrance of the park didn't seem to care that we were there, and even told us to leave or that it would be wise to leave because of the kids and the weather.
They knew something we didn't know.
But, like, we came all the way here. Like, we just took a taxi from the city center to come here. We're not just going to leave. Even if the coaster never opened, it's like, well, this is part of the experience. Like, we're still going into the park and, like, exploring and experiencing the park. While we waited for Allspeeds to open, we did the e-ticket dark ride. Most of the Sunac parks have, like, a major dark ride of some kind. This one used the... King Kong Fast and Furious style ride system from Dynamic Attractions. I think it's a real Dynamic Attractions installation.
So? Even with like the shifting track and stuff? I don't know.
It might.
It might be a knockoff, honestly.
It could be, but then like a lot of the stuff at that park, like obviously they've got real Intamins at the Sunac parks and stuff. So yeah. Who knows? It was a great dark ride. What was it called again? Nirvana?
It was called Nirvana Pilgrimage.
Nirvana Pilgrimage. And it was a neat, very lengthy interpolation of Skull Island, King Kong. And it even used the same animation sequences but instead of King Kong and the dinosaurs, it's a Yeti. And then like, what were the creatures that we were...
like these lion, dragon creatures. Oh my god, yeah, so it's funny you mention that because now it all comes back to me. So yeah, there's that one scene that's clearly the King Kong scene, but they replaced it with a Yeti or like a snowman giant creature, like a white King Kong almost. And then instead of having the dinosaurs, which do the exact same motions and everything,
the animations are
they're
the same.
Giant lions.
It's just
they're like giant lion creatures.
The models, the character models that do the animations are different.
Yeah, so it was really fun. It was like
perfect clone.
It was a very rip-offy, but very Chinese. But the ride was pretty impressive. It was a massive ride. We had to wait in quite a bit of queue for it because there were so many kids. The pre-show for it wasn't working, but I mean it's China. I'm really not surprised by that. I was just happy that this ride existed and was open.
They had a cool, like you mentioned earlier, had this cool like sliding track gag at one point, which was not something we had seen before. Where like
this stone statue was got mad at us, like projection mapping, and then blew us away, and then the whole track slid over.
Yeah.
It was cool.
It was a neat little effect.
Yeah.
So we did that. That felt like a successful, like a valuable use of our time.
I will say on this topic that we have to give Sunac Parks credit because Sunac Parks have, in my opinion, very good dark rides. So the one that we went to in Sunac and Wuxi, which is in Jiangsu, close to Shanghai, they have a dark ride called Final Seed Battle, which we've talked about a couple times on the podcast and on the website. That is a very, very impressive dark ride. Kind of like Spider-Man style. And, I mean, massive, very good dark ride. And then they always have good flying theaters. The park we went to in Guangzhou, that Sunac Park, has a Forbidden Journey style dark ride. We unfortunately didn't ride it because it wasn't open yet. But I will say they have a good focus on every park will get a nice flying theater, and every park from Sunac will have a nice dark ride. I feel like their formula is actually really good.
Yeah. And they usually get like a major signature coaster, usually from Intamin, plus some other coasters. For this park, once we did the dark ride and continued walking around, the rain was starting to clear up a little bit. The forecast was good. We had faith that we would be successful because the forecast seemed to be working in our favor.
Don't forget to mention the space walkthrough.
Yes. So once we completed our loop, one of the themed areas is a space area. It's kind of close to the roller coaster. It's home to this walkthrough attraction with like projection mapping and stuff. It wasn't anything too crazy, but it was kind of cute. And then we did the flying theater. By this point, like the whole park and like everybody in the park was aware that we were there. We got in line for the flying theater, which we were told would be like an hour wait, but it's like, well, we didn't have anything else to do while we waited for the coaster.
I think the crazy part was just that we were in line with a couple hundred kids. This screaming, guys, was insane.
There was just mass hysteria.
Yeah. And it was screaming. Kids jumping over these fences to take photos with us, which their chaperones told them to do. And it got to the point where, like, you know, this was our first on the whole trip. We went on to a lot of parks. This is our first real experience with this. So it was kind of novel still. It was like, wow, this is crazy. Like, you say hi and there's hundreds of kids just losing their minds. Like, it was celebrity status, crazy. And it was like filming us. I mean, there was like hundreds of cameras at once. I'm like, I told them, like, oh, if there's ever any question that the Chinese government knows who we are, they know where we are. Like, they can pinpoint exactly where we are by like social media. Because, I mean, we were just being live blogged by everyone. And then it was still kind of novel. We were still smiling. But later in the trip, I mean, it happened a lot. We were kind of over it because like spring trips were happening. So like all these schools were in the parks. But the nice thing was, and I think Alice was getting to this point, is that it was also crazy that at one point some staffers and some people from the schools, they, I guess, talked about our presence. And just to keep like the kids calm, they actually pulled us out of line and walked us up to the ride and saved us 2 seats.
They had
they held a dispatch for us. So they saved 2 seats in the front row for us. And so we skipped this whole line, which was easily going to take an hour to get on easily because it was a lot of kids and it's one theater, long ride cycle. It's China, like it's not like operations are quick.
That was a great.
And we skipped all of it, and so we got to go straight to the front, and it was very nice of them. So these 2 school chaperones brought us into the ride, and then the ride upset us down. It was honestly like really kind of them that they orchestrated like that, and it was not even the first act of kindness of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk about the ride.
But not the first or not the last?
Not the last, sorry.
I was going to say, I think that was the first act. The ride it's an animated kind of history of China. There was all sorts of details and things that were covered. Lots of nature, some scenes depicting major historical events, including war, which was really fascinating. But it was fabulous. It was very well done. I wish there was like a POV of it somewhere online so we could watch it again because it was a lot to take in. It was like the theme was you were in space. It's the future, but you were in a time machine. So it was like a time machine theater that was taking you to like great historic moments in China. It was fun. It was a neat premise that actually kind of worked with the overall theme of the area. And like Sean said, it was really long. It was a very satisfying ride experience. I love a good flying theater. I feel like half of the flying theaters we've ridden are like in Asia at this point.
If not more than half.
If not more than half.
And I love the flying theaters there, especially because the Sunac ones are so regionally specific.
Yes.
That every single installation is themed to the province it's in. So the one in Wuxi, is there one in Wuxi? Oh my god, I think
there was one in Wuxi. We didn't ride it.
Okay, so that one's themed to being in Jiangsu because the whole park is themed to Jiangsu. Yeah. And then the one we did in Guangzhou is themed to flying over Guangdong, which is their province. So this one was flying over Sichuan.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. Like it was super neat. And you know, it's so they really do design these high quality images or high quality these scenes just for the region, and I mean, there was some stuff we were gonna do like Lashan, and it was represented in there in a way, and it was honestly really, really cool. One of my favorite rides, and I say it every time we ride one of the Sunac ones, but they're good. Yeah,
it was just cool. Like, so by this point, like we were still biding our time for the coaster, but we were pretty feeling pretty satisfied with the 2 rides that we'd already ridden. We waited around. We went to the coaster. I think we did another lap around the coaster. There's a lot of walkways around the coaster that allows you to take pictures and watch the ride, that whole bit. But eventually we kind of just started to stick around the ride and wait it out diligently. And then, school kids started to show up and do the same. So I think, there was definitely kids that, groups that had ridden everything they wanted to ride, and at this point they were just waiting for the coaster. So school groups descended on us, and there was more hysteria as the kids discovered that we were there waiting for the coaster. And then eventually the coaster did start testing. The rain started clearing up. The staff were like, okay, the ride's going to open. We were the first ones in line. We got on the ride, and then they pulled us for measuring.
Which is always the worst.
And this was one for the ages, because
this was probably the most spectacular situation we ever had. So first of all, we showed up, like Alex said, before the ride opened, and we kind of just set it out, because I said, the rain is getting light, and all these damn school kids, they're going to rush in line. I have no time to wait for this. Because we had to go to another park still, so we'll get to that. But, so we sat there for a little bit, and, we used Google Translate with the cast member, the staff member a little bit, from, hey, we want to, write this thing, and, is it going to open, the rain, and, it's not raining anymore. I'm just trying to coax them into, give me more information. And so eventually, it's going to open in a little bit. So we see, I hear these kids come. And I'm like, okay, shit, I can hear them coming.
They're coming up the stairs.
I can hear them coming up the stairs.
The elevated entrance plaza for the coaster.
So I said to Alex, let's get going. Let's just stand there. Yeah. Sure enough, we stand there, and everyone just lines up. There's hundreds of people lined up behind us. We're like, shit.
We were afraid that the kids would try to blow past us to get to the coaster. Then I thought about it, and I'm like, we are the attraction. These kids aren't going to cut in front of us because they're trying to get to us.
So funny enough, they were actually pretty well behaved because everyone made them line up, and there was these army guys that made
members
because every little group has a little army guy with them. I don't exactly know what the story is there.
Yeah,
but there's a school chaperone and an army guy.
There's a guy in military fatigues, helping the teachers,
yelling at the kids,
manage the children.
It's around the crowd. But anyway, so we walk through the line. We followed the cast member through the line, and then. I'm thinking, great, let's sit our ass down, let's sit, let's be going. And then they're measure. So I'm over here all right, let's stand against the pole, and let's go and sit down on the ride. Because, they weren't really that communicative in the beginking. They just kind of let me sit, and then they were, trying to get me, whistle me back, and I was like, well, I'm already seated.
And then they, separated.
I had already closed the restraint, and I thought to myself, I'm ready now. I know Alice will get out, no worries, but, I am taller. I am the concern. So I was like, I just closed our restraint. I wasn't actually even sure what was going on. I thought maybe they couldn't have both of us on the same. I was really, you never know what their excuses are there.
You never know what's trying to.
So then they pulled me out the train, and they say, oh, you're too tall. Measure. We measure. They say, okay, we'll wait here. They were going to call someone, a supervisor over. So they call a supervisor over, and they start dispatching, and the supervisor's like, okay, it looks okay, but, I feel like you're too tall. And so he's like, let's go do the measuring pole outside. So we go, and we follow the guy at the exit after waiting for hours to get on this damn thing to go to the measuring sign outside. And he's like, well, you're too tall. But Alex,
the ride manager was, determined. And but I kept fighting back. I was not.
Alex is like, take off your shoes. So I'm like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. But Alex is like, no, do it. He was like, do it. I was like, all right, you know what? It's a stunt. We flew all over the world. We are in Sichuan. We took an hour and a half drive through the jungle to get to this damn theme park. We waited all day for this ride. I'm not going to leave without a battle.
One of the points that I argued was that you looked like you were taller than the sign because everybody measuring you was short.
That's right. It's because they were all looking from below.
You guys are all looking. You guys are all really short, and you're looking from your point of view. Of course, it looks like he's too tall.
So then I took out my shoes and I stood in the puddles.
I was the one that measured you.
You said
they wanted me to measure you because I was the right height to measure you.
Well, and I had puffy hair, so another problem was
suspicious of me measuring you because they were they knew I had an ulterior motive, and really the key to success was that
persistency.
We kept, being persistent, and we kept escalating. It got escalated to the entire the manager.
But before we got there, I took my shoes off to be hey, without shoes, I am below the height limit. First of all, they wouldn't press down.
Sean wears these basketball shoes type things, and they have a lot of height and support, which you need for walking. So
So then I took him off, and he's like, no, put him back on. Like, because I was like, he's like, he translated on Google, like, you're gonna get a cold, because we were just translated back and forth. Like, mind you, no, they didn't speak English, we didn't speak Chinese.
And it's like the floor is wet from the rain.
Yeah, so my feet are wet. I'm just standing there in the rain waiting to be measured. And then they call the park management over. I put my shoes back on. I take my shoes back off. I'm like, let me demonstrate for them. So eventually they were super, super sweet. And they were like, you know what? We're going to let you ride. Like they said, we're going to make an exception. We know you came from, because we had translated like, we came from here. We're just here for this roller coaster. Because like, why else would we be there, you know? And then he asked us on Google, like, oh, are you a coaster enthusiast? Like, you know, do you travel for coasters? So we explained, like, yeah, like we're here for this ride. We rode it in Germany, like the clone. Like
we wrote the original.
We've ridden this train type a million times. And so then eventually the senior people from the park came over and they let us on and they escorted us on through like the fast pass lane and we got front row. And then they felt bad for my feet, which is the cutest thing. So we're just super thankful to ride. I don't care if my feet are wet. I don't care if I get
so happy.
You know, and then so we ride, and then we get back to the station, and we're like thankful, like shaking his hand, you know, buying whatever. You know, we're all come together like in it, like we're really thankful. And he was like, you know, it was a really positive vibe, honestly. It was very wholesome. And then I walk up the stairs, and this park manager comes over, and she brings me a set of I love Chengdu socks.
These cute little
socks. I love Chengdu socks, but they're way too small.
They're adorable.
But she's like, oh, you know, we don't want you to get the cold. Your feet are wet, you know. And so they gave me these, like, free socks from the gift store. It was the cutest thing. So I go to the restroom and I change into them, just on principle.
We did like a little photo shoot with the socks.
Yeah, it was cute. And then we walked around the ride a little bit, and because the ride is also a walkthrough, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So like obviously Phantasialand, Taron is like, you know, the land is a walkthrough and Taron is waved throughout it. Here it's just kind of like a giant walkthrough with the roller coaster in it. So we took some photos, which I already shared some on social media. There's super some on Instagram, but I'll share some more when this podcast comes out. And the ride itself was quite good. Let's talk a little bit about the ride experience.
Definitely comparable in experience to Taron. It felt different in ways that I didn't expect. I guess because like the ride has a lot of theme infrastructure, but the way that things are set up around the ride is like very different from Taron, and like structures that are around Taron are not the same structures that they built around this ride. So parts of the ride that would have been like near misses or flybys on one are not on the other, if that makes sense. Like lots of theme elements, but very different applications of those theme elements, and it ultimately led to what felt like two surprisingly different ride experiences. This one runs really fast. I think it's faster than Taron, maybe a little bit.
It felt fast, yeah.
And part of that would be because of the height on after the second launch. It's definitely noticeably taller, and it does have to clear that height portion. There's even a catwalk up there. I'm guessing
they added later. If I'm mistaken,
I'm sure there's a story there. But yeah, it was an excellent ride. I mean, we were euphoric from our success of getting Sean on, but it was also just a really excellent ride overall. And
yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really wasn't sure if I was going to feel that way about the Taron clone being. Taron's one of those rides where like really you're going to clone that, because it's one of those things where like it feels so custom, it feels so designed for Phantasialand, and having the Vekoma Junior boomerang in it in Germany. But it was a really surprisingly good ride. I really liked it. It is not as polished as Taron is, but it's honestly quite close. I was pretty impressed with the overall look and feel for it, especially having a giant walkthrough. It's just fun to walk all around the ride and see and look at it and take photos and videos and stuff, and go down those little swinging bridges and stuff. It was fun.
Yeah. It was nice because by that point, the ride was actually open with people on it, so we got to enjoy
taking photos
of people riding the ride. I feel like for Chinese parks, there's always at least one major coaster where, like, you get photos of it operating without people on it, and then, like, you ride, a couple times, and then, like, the ride closes for the day or whatever, and, like, I know with Starry Sky Ripper, that was one of the rides where, like, we got on it a couple times, but we don't even have, like, photos or video of it running with people on it, because every train that dispatched with people on it, we were on it, and that would actually repeat itself in Nanjing with the Shockwave at Dragon Valley, but here in Sunac, in Chengdu, we were actually able to get footage of the ride running with people on it, kids mostly having a great time. And then after that, after we rode the coaster, we went and we changed Sean's socks, and then we went and rode the mine train. We were like definitely running late in our overall day plan because
this took hours.
This was a whole ordeal. It was a
whole thing.
At least the taxi. At first, we were like, "Oh my god, the taxi ride is taking longer than we thought. We should have gotten there sooner." Obviously, it didn't matter how soon we got to the park because we still had to wait around for the coaster to open. But then it was like, well, now we're not getting to Happy Valley when we thought we would be getting there, and the taxi drive is going to take longer to get there than we thought. So we even thought about just bouncing as soon as we got on the coaster. But then we were like, well, let's do the mine train too because we're here. Let's go ride it. We walk up to the mine train, and there's a line. But the staff member just pushed us through the VIP line, the fast pass line.
At this point, everyone knew of our existence.
There was walkie-talkies involved. Because every ride operator knew we were there.
We've already skipped the line on the Flying Theater. Then we had the whole ordeal where all the management got involved with the Taron clone, all speeds. And then we get to the family coast, and these people look at us and know exactly who we are. They say
the
this
staff
lane,
member's right this way.
And we go up the stairs, and she she even doesn't make us merge with the line upstairs. We just get to go straight to the station and pick our row. I mean, it was almost hilarious how matter of fact it was. It was almost like we
they're here.
They're all right. It was not even necessarily smiles or excitement. It's all right, it's these people.
I think they were kind of trying to keep it low. They didn't want to alert the children in line that we were there.
Yeah, I think so because it caused such mass hysteria. Because even doing the high check stuff, I mean, it was 1,000 kids screaming in the line for all speeds. I don't think I can overstate how crazy the energy was.
And
for
they
these
were trying
kids.
To give us food. They were feeding us.
They were
had brought food from their lunches,
and they were just stuffing Alice's hands with food.
They were prying our hands open and closing it like candy and chips. It was
super endearing. I mean, I had no negative experiences with any kids in the entire trip.
Surreal.
But it was a lot. It was a lot to handle. Do not want to be a celebrity like that because
we were joking. We were like, "Is this how Taylor Swift feels?"
Every second of her
life.
Again, on this day, I still kind of felt it's kind of cute. It's endearing. I can't believe it. It's kind of crazy. You're smiling the entire time. You're posting to everyone. All these kids.
Yeah.
But when I tell you that there was a day where it was even worse.
Yeah, Sunac.
Wait for that podcast episode. Then I was kind of over it.
Happy Valley.
I was like, all right, I need a breather. It is a lot. I just want to take a photo of this ride. It dispatches once every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Please do not force me to take photos right now. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Anyway, that's a different conversation. And then we rode Family Thriller. That was fun. We did another loop around the park before we left. Family Thriller is a Jinma rides Vekoma mine train knockoff kind of ride, but it misses the final helix, so it's kind of like Calamity Mine, but without the final helix. Ran really well though. Mm-hmm. I think we like these rides.
We rode we've ridden 5 of these now in the last couple of months, all in mainland China, either knockoff ones or the real Vekoma ones, and they're great rides. They always deliver each time. It's just kind of funny that there's so many of them. I mean, some of them because Chengdu, both of the parks in Chengdu had them. It was just that the Sunac Park had the knockoff one, and the Happy Valley Park had the Vekoma one. But it was fun getting 2 of these coasters in the same day, and one being the authentic version, one being the knockoff, and getting to ride them both. Which wouldn't necessarily be possible under most circumstances. Pretty much the only way to do that is to do it in Chengdu, I think, by hitting both of the parks the same day.
Yeah, same day, yeah.
But yeah, so we wrapped up our Sunac. We made our way. We raced over to...
well, we did a lap around the park, and I want to mention a couple rides real quick. This park is home to one of those giant, big glass water slides that you've seen about on the Chinese parks.
Glass water slide.
We actually just saw a video of it because it was close for us. I don't think we would have ever even been able to ride it.
I don't think we would have been able to ride. I feel like
it was
we definitely exceeded the weight.
It's tall. It is probably the second tallest ride in the park. It's a big ride.
It's just as tall as the Intamin.
But yeah, I mean, that was kind of the only other thing of note. I mean, there was a rapids ride and stuff. There was cute rides. I think overall the park is pretty decent. I mean, I enjoyed walking around there. I enjoyed the other rides that we did. We got 3 really good rides, 4 good rides in.
Sunac parks, I think, are usually really solid. We would have gone to the one in Chongqing, but we were just very burned out. By that point, we decided to eliminate.
There was just, it's just a lot going to China for theme parks.
The All Speeds experience was a hard-fought victory. A victory nonetheless, but one that left us feeling worn out. To the point where by the time we got to Happy Valley, we were sort of dreading what the experience would be like.
Which, fair enough, we had 2 more situations like that.
We had good reason to be wary of how it would go, because, like, sure as shit, the first thing we rode, well, let me not get ahead of myself. We take our taxi. We left the Sunac Park.
And we booked a Didi, which Didi is easy, always available.
And again, same bullshit getting out of the Sunac area, like, for the taxi.
Well, the biggest thing is there's this toll road they built right next to the park, which everyone's directions say to go into the toll road, but the toll road is actually not open yet. So everyone has to go reverse on the toll road, like, find a way to go around and make a U-turn, and go down this little, like, sand path into this dirt road just to get out of the area. I mean, it was pretty wild.
Like a fucking alley to get out of this place.
Typical experience. But then we drove, or Didi drove. We just sat in the back.
It was a relief, even though Happy Valley parks are not as consistent as the Sunac parks. At least in this case, like, the Happy Valley parks on our trip were ones that were conveniently situated to city landmarks. At least in the case of the the Western China parks. The Nanjing Happy Valley wasn't exactly in a central location, but it was still more straightforward and accessible than, like, this Sunac Chengdu park that we went to. But yeah, we get to Happy Valley. It's a cute setup, kind of in the city center. There's, like, shopping and a resort and whatnot. Big park. Not as polished as the Beijing park, but probably still in better shape than the Shanghai park that when we went in 2019, and definitely in better shape than the Shenzhen Happy Valley, Night Valley parks. The new area of the park, the Western Regions area, which is like a Middle Eastern area, and it's called Western Regions, of course, because in China, the Middle East is actually West, so it's the Midwest. And so we went there first because those rides closed earlier. It didn't appear that the wooden coaster was open. It was open. It just was, like, not dispatching very much. We went to the dive machine first. Great little dive coaster. Not, like, the best dive machine in the world or anything. It's, like, kind of in between dive pedigrees, because it feels like it comes from the same school of thought as, like, Sheikra, with, like, its single inversion and, like,
I kind of lump it in with the Baron, because
definitely,
like, it's not as big and tall, and the track isn't as wide, and when the trains are only six across, so it's kind of like Baron.
But it's bigger than Baron.
But I feel like it's like the mid-size one.
Very big ride.
Because then you have the generation of inversions and the Vesper trains like Valkyria and Dr. Diabolical and Emperor and stuff, and that's, I feel like, its own generation.
This was the last.
I kind of call this, like, I kind of feel like this is in the same generation as Baron.
But this is the last B&M dive machine to have standard shoulder harnesses. In fact, it opened after, like, Valraven and stuff. So when it opened, people were surprised to see that it still had the old restraints, and that was a component of the ride that I was looking forward to, actually, because it was so nice to ride a newer dive machine that still had the old trains.
So we show up to the ride, and of course it shows this height limit that's the exact same as
all speeds.
So I'm over here, like, not having a cute time waiting in line. So we get to the station, and sure enough, like, how tall are you, this or that? So I take off my shoes again, and I'm like, I've played this trick before, and he let us on. It actually wasn't
that
deal.
one was a lot less
pretty easily. And so we got on, and they did tell us to sit in the big boy seats, but it didn't really matter. And so we got on and we ride, and it's honestly a good ride. I think it was pleasant having the 2 drops.
It was fun.
Having tunnel, splashdown, inversion, like, you know, it was a cute ride. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was a fun ride. It was a fun ride. Like, I will say I enjoyed it. It wasn't very memorable, but I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I think the ones like Emperor, like the dive machines that are, like, inversion heavy, I think are becoming more of my preference. Although we haven't ridden that many, I expect Iron Menace to be a ride that I like for the same reasons that I really like Emperor. But yeah, it was a good ride. It was just a neat one to say we have ridden, even though, like, if you've ridden, you know, the Western, like the U.S. dive machines and stuff, or even some of the ones in Europe, like, you really, it's nothing too spectacular, just different. Like, it's neat to have a different credit, and one that, like, I think really one of the most memorable aspects of it is the way that it threads the turnaround on the GCI with a moment that sort of reminds me of, like, the Blue Fire Wodan interactivity moment. The wooden coaster is a good ride, the GCI. Sean was not allowed to ride. This was the height ceiling on the wooden coasters.
It was 188 centimeters. I mean,
so
Alex is technically above that. I think.
We were barely getting Sean on these 190 centimeter. So like we tried, we lost that battle. We were already exhausted still from like the last, not just All Speeds, but also from the dive coaster. So like we just knew that was not going to be a winnable battle. Like now that like it was, we were at an increasing disadvantage. I rode it. It was fine. It reminded me of Apocalypse at Magic Mountain, but it didn't do a whole lot. Like there was a lot of straightness and directional changes that were like kind of gradual. It wasn't, I don't know. It wasn't particularly memorable, and it was definitely like they didn't have a lot of room to like build this ride. It felt like GCI is usually really good at like doing the most with a ride, despite space constraints and other things. It just didn't seem like that ambitious or intense or spectacular. And that was probably by design. I'm guessing that had more to do with what Happy Valley wanted out of the ride than like what GCI was willing to provide. But it felt like kind of a watered down Apocalypse meets Rodon kind of experience.
Yeah, it looked pretty, but
it had a nice aesthetic. But yeah, not super eventful. Not a lot of airtime for a ride that looked like it would have airtime. GCI like does a nice job of peppering little airtime hills and things. So we just rode Gold Striker a few days ago, and that was like a great reminder of like everything that GCI is capable of. And they'll like sneak little airtime moments in where you wouldn't even imagine there being any. And Desert Rally Race was like the opposite. There were places where you thought like, oh, this would be a great place for an airtime hill, and then it was just flat. Like there was just nothing. But an interesting ride nonetheless.
So after my salty 5 minutes of not getting on, we went to the SOC, which is one of the only two of the Vekoma suspended looping coasters that has the Shenlin layout with the bonus helix. And we already had just ridden the one in Beijing, the original, just a few weeks earlier, which you may have listened to that podcast episode as well. And so we rode this one, which was the second and last one in that little small collection. And it was running great. It was awesome. The height limit was 200 centimeters, so I didn't have to worry about it that much. But then we waited for the front row. We waited a couple extra trains, typical. And then we got to the front row, and even though we cleared the seats, they make us move to row 5. So we're like, what the fuck? So we sat in the front. We waited for the front. We cleared. I don't know if it was a thing that only like short people could sit in the front or whatever, because then Happy Valley and Beijing
they weren't even loading the front
row.
car.
So
Something happened.
There's something with that.
There was an incident of some kind.
But it was whatever, as long as we got on. And you needed a bunch of clicks on that one too. So we rode that. It was good. They got a new color scheme. It looks beautiful. Yeah. It really complements the Megalight right next door.
Yeah,
the funny thing is, the Megalight is so much shorter than the SLC. Like, it's kind of funny looking at the two. Like, the SLC is such a bigger ride.
Over it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
So the Megalight, which I love the way these two rides fit in together. They really snap together like a puzzle piece. If you look at like a satellite image of the ride,
yeah, totally.
They're totally
all the helices are kind of like
nestled into each other. Yeah, they make a great fit. But it's also kind of funny how like the Megalight is really behind the SLC, but it's also shorter than the SLC. And in my mind, I wouldn't have imagined that like an SLC would be towering over the Megalight, but it really is like noticeably, substantially taller. The Megalight was great. Megalights are great rides. They're not as, I don't know, the first time I rode one, I remember feeling like it didn't quite live up to the hype. Then we rode the one in Japan. That was your first Megalight, and I think you echoed that sentiment that like the love, the like undying worship of the Megalight rides was like not totally founded. It was just nice to ride this one.
I mean, yeah, it's a fun ride, but again, I feel like they're a little bit overhyped. But I will say I like this one a lot more than Kingfisher. And then one thing I want to say about that is that this one made you do those stupid
This one had the shoulder straps.
But then, like, so you shoulder strap yourself in, but then, like, by the top of the lift hill, you're
The
practically...
straps have kind of like fallen off.
They're really falling off.
Like,
So, like, they're kind of in the way to slapping your face more than they are doing anything useful. But it's a whole production. You have an actual seatbelt. You've got 2 shoulder belts you got to put on. And then you have your actual restraint. I mean, nobody going anywhere on that one. But I think it was a fun ride.
It was. I will say
like
it was running well.
Favorite
and
ride
I
in the
liked
park.
it better. Yeah. Like, we rode it a second time, and I liked it even better the second... Or did we ride it 3 times?
We rode it 3 times.
Yeah. I liked it better with each ride.
Yeah,
My first
really
impression after the ride was like, oh, I like this, but now that I've ridden enough of these megalights, I feel like I can say with confidence that they're overrated. But it does grow on you a little bit, and it is a clever layout, and I just love... What I love is Chengdu... Or not Chengdu. Yeah, Chengdu Happy Valleys.
Chengdu, yeah.
I really love this park's lineup. Like, their roster is such a cool roster with, like, so many standout, like, e-ticket coasters. And they're all kind of pushed to one side. We did the big, like, the first 4 coasters that we went to were all kind of right next to each other, and then you have to go all the way around to the other side of the park to get to the mine train.
So the first thing I wanted to do was go to the Flying Island, because that was closing at 6, and it was like 5:55. We freaking ran, man.
We booked it.
We get over there, and it's 5:59. We're in the line. We're, like, waiting to get on, and he's like, oh, we're close. I'm like, well, it's 5:59.
And the queue's still open.
The queue says 6. This queue says open. I mean, I wasn't with that person, but I was just kind of trying to coax him into letting us ride. And he let us ride, and we took some photos, but of course, with the weak-ass dispatches in China, didn't get any trains on the photos. Yeah. So, but we did get some photos, and it actually was a pretty pleasant.
And, like, the Western Regions area had already closed for the night, so there was, like, no trains on that. Anyway, like...
I will say this ride really highlighted that this is one of the original Happy Valleys, because Happy Valleys have made a switch. Like the Happy Valley in Chongqing, Happy Valley in Nanjing, and in a way even Beijing, because of all the upgrades Beijing has gotten, feel very different. They're much better themed. They are just nicer parks. There's a lot more going on. It's not as sterile. Like, I feel like the original Happy Valley is almost in a way a bit of a Cedar Fair vibe sometimes, where it's kind of sterile, and they all had these like circus areas and stuff.
Like big gaps.
It didn't really work.
Attractions.
And this park is still like that. In fact, I was kind of disappointed with how I wasn't really feeling this park. Like the Western Regions, which is the new expansion area, is the only nice part of the park. The rest, despite having nice foliage, I will say that it felt very classic Happy Valley. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily ugly, it wasn't necessarily poorly maintained, but it didn't have a lot of character either. It wasn't like it was a very pleasant place to be. Does that make sense?
It just felt flat, especially after going to Happy Valley Beijing, which is like a rock star amusement park, and the Happy Valley Beijing is just flush with attractions. Like that Happy Valley used to be the same way, where like not every area of the park had a lot of rides. There were areas that were like full of big gaps of like just landscaping instead of attractions. Like the entrance plaza for Happy Valley Beijing used to just be like landscaping, and then they turned it into the race car theme and added a bunch of rides. And they added a bunch of rides to the Shangri-La area, and they've added the water park into what was once the Atlantis area that didn't really have any rides beside the flying coaster, and so on and so forth. And then, like, Chengdu just feels a lot more like how Happy Valley Beijing probably used to feel, and definitely felt a lot like Shanghai Happy Valley, where the ride roster hasn't really expanded that much. I mean, they did add the Western Regions area, but that was a new area that they added to the park. And that area, like you said, felt like the newest and the nicest, and felt more like the newer Happy Valley business model. But the existing older areas definitely feel a lot more like they feel exactly like how you would imagine they would based on going to the older Happy Valley parks, where there's not as many rides and the areas don't seem quite as well, like the use of space doesn't feel optimized the way that the newer Happy Valleys and like the updated Beijing Happy Valley feels. Especially on the side of the park that doesn't have all of the coasters. Because it's cool having, like, so you have the SLC and the Megalight that are right next to each other, the 2 e-ticket coasters in the Western Regions area, and then, like, the rest of the park, there's, like, the area in the front that has, like, the S&S towers and the wave swinger, like, kind of the classic.
Yeah, the old circus port area.
Yeah, and then the Shangri-La area in the back with the mine train and the rapids ride. and there's like a star flyer.
Well, in between was the water park.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a half-ass water park.
Like
with the
weird
big
maritime water
yeah,
park.
and the shoot. And like you have the gardens in the middle, which are kind of nice, though. I will say that. The gardens in the middle where we rode the
flying island.
The flying island was actually
There's a
pretty neat.
Mondial splash over there. It's just clear that, like, Happy Valley parks used to be a lot more of, like, spacing between rides. And that wasn't necessarily a good thing. Because now when you go to the newer Happy Valley parks where it feels like the rides are really nicely woven in and stacked. And you get, like, we'll get to this in the Nanjing episode, but the Nanjing Happy Valley feels like, even though it's a smaller park, there's more to do. And the space feels so much more optimized.
Yeah, almost like a Fantasia along the way, where like it feels so massive by the way that they constructed the midways too.
Yeah,
it really is not that big of a park.
Yeah,
and so then we went on our last coaster, which is the Mine Train, which is an actual Vekoma one. It's called the Dragon in Snowfield, and it is a beautifully decorated ride. Awesome. I mean, I will say most mine trains in China, they really deck up the lift hills and it looks pretty. This one has like 2, I guess, birds holding
it's this big
like this ring in the middle, or maybe
sorts.
2 dragons. And the ride itself ran great. The queue was pretty decent. The station was an interesting theme. And then the mine train itself, yeah, I mean, the photos was cool. I mean, there wasn't much else to say about it. I mean, it was a good ride. It was pleasant. It was a real one, so it had an actual helix. Enjoyable ride. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
It was exactly what we expected based on how wonderful the mine train at Beijing Happy Valley is. So we were looking forward to it, and it definitely delivered. We finished the loop of the park, kind of reconnected around to
the
where
Western regions.
The Western regions area. And Western regions is sort of like an offshoot that's tacked on to the back, and it meets in like a 3-way intersection of sorts. From like the Garden Shangri-La area, and then the area that has the SLC in the Megalite.
Yeah, which Megalite's a different area, even in the match.
Yeah,
and so but the Megalite was also open to park close. We rode that 2 more times, and then we left. Yeah, I mean, it was a good day overall. I will say, prettiness wise, I think the park in the Sunac park was probably still prettier.
Yeah,
but. I mean, there's a lot more to do at the Happy Valley. Happy Valley is kind of iconic. It's dead in the middle of Chengdu. We had a good time. I think we went and walked around the shopping area for a little bit, and then we took a taxi, a Didi, back to the hotel. And I think, what did we do? Did we eat anything for dinner there? I think we tried going to Wagras. It was closed. What did we end up going?
We ate. We ate.
I don't know what we did.
Was that the one where we did the egg pancake, or was
no? Egg pancake was the day after.
Lashan Day.
Yeah.
No, I think we did go.
Oh, no, I got that salad. I got that noodle bowl, the Sichuan noodle bowl at the 7-Eleven, remember?
Oh, yeah,
that's right. Getting snacks to go to bed.
We had 7-Eleven dinner.
It was a long day.
Chengdu is amazing because you could be looking at any random street corner and it looks normal, but then under the roads, underneath everything, Chengdu is like one big giant shopping basement.
And it all started in like, what was it, early 2000, but like the first tunnel of Chengdu, and it was like the first underground like mall passageway, which are really common in Asia, and now they're everywhere, and the original one is just sitting there abandoned.
Like the city center, which is right where we were staying, like the plaza and stuff, it all just kind of looks like a big like decorative garden monument. And you get closer to it, and it's actually like
metro station meets mall meets food court.
A giant shopping mall hiding underneath the surface.
I will say, shopping mall wise, Chengdu is probably the heaviest on the shopping malls. They're everywhere.
Shopping situation is crazy.
There's a lot of money in Chengdu.
Storefront.
Yeah.
Every building in the city had commercial ground level. Like everything seemed like it was a storefront, and they're selling Panda merch and tea. And snacks and mini marts.
A lot of gold selling. Remember a lot of gold selling?
Yeah, a lot of gold, jewelry, food, lots of food, street food stuff, things on sticks.
I guess we can mention the food we had because the day after we went to Lashan, and we'll talk about Lashan in our next episode, so make sure to tune in for that.
Yeah.
But when we came back, we had some food, and we went to one of our favorite restaurants in China is Wagras, which has like pretty high quality like smoothies, juices, but also like power bowls, and for you like laksa and
it's a Shanghai-based restaurant, and the theme is like modern American style dining.
Was it American though? I feel like
they call it that because it's like,
nothing about the menu is American.
It's like American style in the sense that it's like fast, casual, modern with like lots of dietary friendly foods.
Yeah.
So that's really what they mean by American.
And then I really want to try out this one pancake place, which has like street pancakes. Like I guess they call it like trash can pancakes technically. And they had a place that we saw the night before, and we decided to go. It was so good. Oh my god, it was so good. And then we also had Haiti, of course, because you cannot walk by Haiti.
We basically went after our Lachon day. We got some good snacks too, like between the Lachon train station snack run and then like the 7-Eleven run after our park day. We got a lot of snacks and like little food moments in. Yeah,
we do a lot more street food these days, just like little snacks here or there, or go to a quick convenience store. But this was actually, we kind of just like hopped around from like little food stand to little food stand.
I loved our Haiti experience because so we had like proper dinner, and then we had like cheese tea for dessert, and then we had more dinner with the egg pancake. The egg pancake thing is really cool, guys. It's like a pancake pocket with like cabbage and
no, it's lettuce
lettuce and like tortilla.
Well, here's what they do.
Chip.
So first they make they put like a little bit of dough, like crepe dough.
Yeah.
And they spread it out. Then they put an egg on, or 2 eggs on there. They crack 2 eggs on there, and then they spread out the eggs. So then it's like a layer of egg and a layer of pancake, pretty much. And then they put tortillas on there, which they either crush. They usually crush them. And then they put lettuce on there. They put hot chili sauce on there, which is very good.
Sesame seeds are involved.
Sesame seeds, and then depending on if you get meat or not, or if you get like a fried, like a Chinese donut, you can put it in there. One. Yeah, it was very, very good. But that place in particular, because I had a couple in China, and that is like my favorite one. Though. So
yeah, the one that we had in Chengdu. Really, this was instilled by the Beijing breakfast buffet at our JW Marriott because they had egg pancake for breakfast, and it was like we needed to eat there. Like I needed egg pancake. We needed it like every morning. I needed it every morning, and then.
But these are quite different though because they really load them up with like they make it into a wrap here.
Yeah, they make this into more of a meal, like a whole meal. But it's like amazing. It's like a very traditional French technique that they use to accomplish the crepe texture. It's just neat. I just love the fusion of like food culture. You have like very traditional Chinese flavors and ingredients, and also French ingredients and French technique to make these. So.
And that kind of ends our episode about Chengdu. We'll say the Intamins really came through here because I think our favorite ride at both parks was the Intamin.
The Intamins came on strong.
But I enjoyed the parks. I'm not really rushing to go back to them, mostly because they are not very height friendly, and they're not like the greatest parks. Like there's parks in China, I'm like, now I really have to come back because I liked it so much. I don't know if either of these are quite in there, but they were cool to do, and I really think that the Chengdu quality of rides, like with the dark rides, the Flying Theater, Taron, it is, I think, the stronger park. But if you're looking for more just like coasters and stuff, obviously Happy Valley is going to be. And Happy Valley is so easy to get to because it's right there in the city. Like it's super easy. Yeah, it's super easy to get to. That's where Sunac can be kind of hard. And if you're just going for the coaster, maybe a risky pilgrimage. Perhaps a Nirvana pilgrimage. And with that, we're ending this episode of Coaster Kings Radio. Make sure to listen to our previous couple China episodes. We have 2 from Beijing, 1 from Shanghai. And then we're going to come up with our next episode about Chongqing, which is a fascinating city. We're going to talk all about the city a little bit. We're going to talk about Lashan, the giant Buddha of Lashan, the world's biggest Buddha. And we're going to be talking, of course, about Chongqing Happy Valley, home to a phenomenal wing coaster, spectacular ride. So we'll catch you guys next week. Make sure to like, follow, all the good stuff, and leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. Bye.
Bye.